And we are live. All right. Welcome to GladrapChannel. This is episode of What's What with Benji Watt. And today we've got a special guest who's also another Watt. It's Tommy Watt from T2T Boxing. My man, how are you doing?
I'm good, mate. I'm good. How you doing?
Good, man. It's great to have, the #1 sports reporter out there in Australia on our show. So thank you very much for, taking the time to do this.
I appreciate his kind words, mate.
And I think we need to address the elephant in the room. Sadly, me and Tommy are not related, but we share the same last name, so
Yeah, yeah. No, been good to see someone with that an S on the end. That's sure. Unusual as that is.
Wait, who has the S? Is it Tommy?
Neither of us, but
okay.
everyone else does. Neither of us do.
And I get that a lot as well. It's like everyone says Benjamin Watts. It's like no S.
Did any of your ancestors invent electricity or anything?
Not that I'm aware of. I don't think it had anything to do with the steam engine either. But of course.
All right, Tommy, tell me what you thought about the Joseph Parker and the Dilian Whyte fight.
Well, cracker fight. It was everything that everyone wanted, which so many fights recently have been. I think, for us in the Southern Hemisphere, it wasn't quite the result that everyone wanted, but I think it's close enough that Joe can, justifiably call for a rematch. There was, he had him very, very dangerously caught at the end. But I think Dilian Whyte again showed that he's only moving forwards as a boxer and getting better and better every time we see him.
So I think it's actually just announced today, or it was a media conference today with David Higgins, as we all know is Joseph Parker's notorious as manager, that that he does actually have grounds for a what was it called, appeal because of the head clash, but they have announced that they will no longer they're not interested in it and they just want to move forward from this.
Yeah, it doesn't surprise me to hear Higgins saying that. Look, it's his job as a promoter to hype up those sides of things, and I don't really think he needs to in this case, and I don't think anything would have happened should they have appealed. But yeah, it's good to see that they're not, and it's not muddying any waters. And I think Joe's always carried himself with a strong sort of air of professionalism, and I think this sort of carries that on, and I think he won't struggle to get fights because of that.
And in the past, we've actually had I think 4 instances where people have actually appealed Joseph Parker fights here in New Zealand, and they've all ended the same, where they haven't led up to anything. And I think they've actually learnt from that as well. It's like, well, if we do the same thing, nothing's going to happen. It's just going to be a waste of money. Let's just move on from here.
Yeah, I think the governing bodies as well, they rarely want to do too much that's going to shake things up, especially when they've taken all their fees already from a fight. The last thing we want to do is call that fight in jeopardy. So I think we rarely see much from the governing bodies unless there's something hugely untoward, or one of their golden boys doesn't get the result they wanted.
Do you think he was hard done by the referee?
No, I don't think so. Look, I think he had a much harder shake of it last time he went over to the UK. I think the ref allowed them to fight enough, and I think it was I didn't have any issues with the ref as I was watching it, really.
Yeah, well, they say that this is the third controversial, I say air quotation marks, third controversial time there was some sort of silly ref decision, because the first time Joseph Parker went against the Yuri Fury fight, they were all controversial because they didn't like the ref that was judging, because they thought they were too lenient for Yuri Fury, so they appealed to change the referee with one of the judges. And then the second time, as we all know, the Italian ref that just didn't let Joseph Parker go on the inside at all. And then there's this instance where the ref just didn't see the head clash.
Yeah, I think I agree with him on the Yuri Fury fight. I think they weren't given a fair shake of the dice in a lot of ways there, and he was he was allowed to get roughed up. And like I said, not sure I agreed with the decision in that fight. I think Parker probably did edge it. It was, but yeah, it was too close probably. And I think, we all know what happened in the Joshua fight. So the referee, reminiscent of the Hatton Mayweather Cortez refereeing, just when you have a fighter whose sole game plan is based on inside fighting, and the referee is intent on not allowing any inside fighting at all, he's kind of made the decision as to where that fight's going to go. And unfortunately, that's what we saw in the Parker AJ fight. And I think, the ref not seeing a head clash is different to him having I guess, a mindset that stifles the fight. Anyone can miss something like that. So I wouldn't want to, criticize anyone too harshly for that.
Yeah, he said he was quite affected by the headbutt. At the press conference today, Parker the team said that they should have actually been given a 5-minute rest. And after the headbutt, he sort of felt like he was in a dream state, and it was almost in a daze, and it took him several rounds to get back into gear.
Yeah, look, I think head clashes happen in boxing, really. I'm not sure. I can't remember the last time I saw someone take 5 minutes after a head clash.
Mainly for low blows.
All low blows, really. But I think Joe's the type of fighter that when the crowd's there cheering him to get back on and to not wait, if you ever see when a fighter does take a bit of a rest, the crowd gets on his back straight away. And I think Joe's the kind of guy that doesn't want to disappoint the crowd, and probably wouldn't have taken the 5 minutes even if the referee had noticed a head clash. I think it's, like I say, it's Higgins' job to look at these things and to create these elements of doubt in the public and creep some credibility back into the loss for Joe. And I think he's got plenty of credibility in the loss. And like I say, I don't think Higgins really needs to do that in this instance. But that's his mode, and that's what he's there to do, and he does a good job of it. And I think, people listen to it. The more he says it, the more it gets circulated, and the more people believe it. And by the 2-3 years time, everyone will be talking about how he was robbed in that Dilian Whyte fight. He had the head clash that no one saw, and that'll all be what everyone talks about, especially the Southern Hemisphere at least. And that's just the way promoters work and the media works in the sport.
And as well, he actually got quite an injury from that head clash as well. And like Kevin Barry has said in multiple media interviews, his ear was completely swollen the next day, to the point that the injury was bad enough they actually had to have a MRI to see how things are. So apparently they'll get the results tomorrow, which is hopefully ends up perfectly fine.
Yeah, fingers crossed. I think, again, especially that area of the head is a horrible place for injuries. So it affects your balance, it affects a lot of things, and it can be hard to recover from. So fingers crossed he's back soon. Like I say, he said he wants to fight. I think today he said he wants to fight as soon as he can.
November, December-ish.
So I think, if we see him, hopefully in New Zealand or Australia, and hopefully see him locally before he gets on his bike and chases down another title. I think it'd be good for him to get another fight here before the end of the year. To pick up a win and start getting some of that positive momentum going again.
Now the question is, what's next? Now, Benji, I don't know whether you know, but Tommy has a really good friendship with Lucas Browne. Almost like his personal cinematographer.
Actually, I've got this question. Do you think Joseph Parker is in the same position as where Lucas Browne is right now?
Nah,
not quite. I think Parker's recently lost his world title. The loss to Whyte was very close, and like you say, you had Whyte really hurt at the end. So I think if you wanted to be in one of the two fighters' positions, I think you still probably want to be in Joe's position. That being said, Lucas had longer to recover from his loss and had time to recharge. He's changed trainers, and we'll see how that's all going to affect him going into his next fight. But I think, they're both coming off losses, to Dilian Whyte. But I think, like I say, Parker's probably in a better position in terms of getting a big fight. I think it'd be not surprising to see him in a world title fight again in the next 6 months. Whereas I think Lucas has probably got another 12 months or so. With he needs to get a couple of big wins under his belt, maybe against Joseph Parker, before I think he's going to be able to push his way back in.
Did you see the post on the Jamie Meyer production page on Facebook, where there was a competition where you can, if you went more than 8 rounds with Lucas Browne, you get 10 grand. Did you see that?
I saw a poster of it.
Is that true?
I'm not too sure. I think there was meant to be a knockout heavyweight tournament was the poster that I saw. I think he had a scheduled fight in the headline. So no, I haven't seen an 8 rounds with Browne, but I'd want a lot more than, was it 10 grand?
I'd
want a lot more than that for 8 rounds.
Well, they've got a lot of Kiwis that have actually called him out on that 10 grand as well. So it's like, yeah, I'll go 10 grand with Lucas Browne, with 8 rounds with Lucas Browne. So
yeah, they're made of something slightly different on that side of the pond. So yeah, they might fancy their chances a bit more. But yeah, I don't think. I think it's about 40 kilos between me and Lucas, so I wouldn't fancy it.
Because if you look on the page, there's all these call outs, you know. Everyone's sort of having these little videos and they're posting it on, so it seems to be very popular. Look at this one. Jump in the ring with Lucas Browne, former world champion, over 10 rounds, and the 28th of September at Gold Coast Convention Center, and collect a cool $10,000. If you're interested, tag a mate. And look at this. It's got around 1,600 comments and 205 shares. So I don't know. Maybe there's a lot of interest.
I know that yeah, I was speaking to Lucas recently, and I know that he was saying he will be out in the Goldie around that time. Like I said, I don't know if that's maybe changed. When was that posted?
That was posted on 1st of August.
Okay, so a week ago. Yeah. Well, maybe I spoke to him earlier today, and he seemed to say he was fighting in the Gold Coast at the end of September. So who knows? It'll be interesting. There's, you know, it's not the first time people have tried to do something differently in boxing here to try and shake things up. Well, I'm not sure how many people will last much longer than 1 or 2 punches, but yeah, we'll see. I think we'll probably see one person get knocked out, and then everyone else will turn around. That queue will get a lot smaller.
Yeah. What do you think the chances of a future Joseph Parker versus Lucas Browne fight? Potentially even on Anzac Day. Oh, not Anzac Day, but around Anzac time.
Yeah, look, I think if, like I say, if Lucas can pick up a couple of wins, probably not in that style, but if he can pick up a couple of wins, scheduled wins, over, you know, some decent, you know, domestic or, you know, top 10 opposition, I think there's names out there that would take the fight with Lucas at the moment. He's not viewed as dangerous as he was by other people, so there's a chance he can get it. He's a former world champion, so he's a good name for other people to take the fights. So yeah, if he can take, you know, get a routine kind of win in the next couple of months, and then towards the end of the year pick up a win against, you know, a big name, then I think he's probably in a position to, yeah, I think he's probably could do it.
Well, there is actually a couple of fighters in New Zealand that would actually probably consider a dangerous fight for Lucas Browne, like Junior Farr, Hemi Ahio, and even David Light, which would probably, he doesn't have the experience as some of the others, but he's still got quite a heavy punch behind him.
Yeah, I think there's a decent emerging heavyweight scene here. There's a few people that, you know, tried and tested and would last a few rounds, which I think is what he needs. And I think at the moment what he needs is really a keep busy fight. There's no rush in getting back in fighting a big name or doing anything stupid. If he's trying to set up a fight with Parker, maybe a fight with the Kiwi is a good idea. Go and fight over there if there's any big cards coming up in New Zealand, maybe. Not that he needs to build up his name, but if it can build the fight, if they can fight on the same card or something, then yeah, it's a huge fight if it happens. There's no way everyone in Australia and New Zealand doesn't get up for that fight. And yeah, an Anzac Day fight would be great because it brings that whole element to it. So yeah, who knows?
So moving on to other news, the Billy Dib has announced his retirement after Lufama. Tommy, did you I caught the fights. Thought they were thought it was a good show, bar one controversial fight. Sorry, but yeah, Billy's had a fantastic career. He's shone the torch for Australian boxing for a long time. He was one of, if not the only, real world level fighter we had from this side of the world for a little while, and I think he's always carried himself very well outside of the ring. He's obviously had his well documented, personal battles as well, and I think to get back to challenge for a world title after everything he's been through is massively
impressive. And I think you could see the effort and the emotional sort of journey he's been through at the end of that fight. So, yeah, look, I think he equipped himself well in that fight. You know, Ten Farmer's a great opposition, and you know, Billy, you know, gave a massive effort. You know, even when he was way down on the cards, and you could hear his corner weren't really wanting to put him through another few rounds, but he wanted to go out on his shield, and he's always been that type of fighter. So I think, yeah, it was good to see him go out with a sort of Warriors type fight. Shame not to see him pick up a win. Would love to have seen him, you know, pick up another world title. But I think you can look back on a fairly storied career and be pretty proud of what he's done. And I think you know, he deserves a lot of respect for the way he's handled himself throughout his career.
And it's definitely the way to retire after a fight, is especially on a world title fight. So I think it's probably the best time for him to go, because how old is he? He's in his 30s, isn't he?
Yeah, it'd be mid-30s, I'd say 34.
Which is probably, as some people say, he could probably go on a little bit. I say mid-30s is probably the best time to actually think about it.
Yeah, look, I think it's. I think with boxing, more than other sports, it's more about the mileage than the age. And you see so many fighters that start late can go on late. Billy's had a long career, a long tough career. Like I say, he's never really shied away from tough fights, and say he's obviously had a bad knockout in Japan a couple of years ago. But he's been in a lot of wars, and he's been in a lot of fights where he's put himself in the same positions that he did on Friday night, where he's in a position where to get caught because he's he likes to go on the attack. Yeah, so I think say he's been in a lot of battles, and now probably is the right time for him to maybe turn his attention to maybe helping other fighters. He works with Mike Altamora, and so he'll know how to help fighters, and he obviously have connections with so many. I wouldn't be surprised to see him picking up a few fighters himself and maybe doing some coaching. But who knows? He's obviously got a good media profile as well. So he's got a few options, I guess. But I'd like to see him maybe transfer his experience to some younger lads from the gyms.
Or maybe even promoting as well, which is promoting other fighters.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's one thing that they've got there's a market here in Sydney which is fairly well milked, and it's the same people that go to a lot of the same shows. So I think it's time for maybe people to try and shake things up a bit. Maybe Billy's profile in promoting events can help bring in new people to the shows, and anything that does that's good for boxing.
Now on the undercard, Tszyu, there's quite a controversial fight, right? Around over Tszyu fought Stevie Ferdinandus.
I don't think it really matters.
But Stevie, this is a good fighter, man. I mean, this guy's not known. I mean, look, he's fought Cairo George and he's beaten him. He's also fought Bo and Morgan. Like, these are both some of our elite fighters in New Zealand. So he's known for tough fights. He's not. I mean, he's not known to take a dive or anything like that. I don't know.
Yeah, okay, no, I haven't seen any of his previous fights, to be honest. But from what I saw on Friday night, we won't be seeing him again. It was, he's let himself down, really, hasn't he? At the end of the day, I think he's probably he's gone into the fight expecting to lose, and when you do that, you probably don't train as hard, probably don't spar as hard, and then probably taken one or two punches and thought, oh, I've had enough here and I'm out. Well, that's what it looked like, certainly. But yeah, it was very disappointing. You could see Tim was disappointed. He obviously wanted to go out and put on a show. He got a chance on live TV and on Fox, and his fight ends up being a bit of a farce. And I think you could see the frustration from him, especially after there have been some great fights surrounding him on the card. It really sort of stuck out as a disappointment.
Yeah, I've actually seen Stevie fight a couple of times, and when he fights fully prepared, he really can bring it. I mean, he like Gladrap said before, he fought Cairo George, which Cairo George, as we all know, he was just coming off a year or 2 year hiatus from a career-threatening injury, which is probably the worst fight for him to come back to, because Stevie is actually not too bad of a boxer if he actually commits himself. And then it ended up beating Cairo, so he's not too bad of a boxer. and then like our number one boxer Bowen Morgan managed to knock him out, which is actually another probably a good matchup as Bowen Morgan versus Tim.
Yeah, do you know about Bowen? Bowen?
I've seen a couple of highlights, but I haven't seen too much. So yeah, I'm gonna have to go from you guys on this one. But look, I think Tim needs to step up his opposition, and I think they were trying to do that, looking at Fernandez's record, whether or not they knew what was coming or not. So yeah, I think it'd be good to see him in some. Look, I think it'd be good in general to see some of these trans-Tasman fights. You know, get some of these Aussies fighting these Kiwis. It's an easy way to sell a fight because people that are half interested in boxing will get involved in, you know, some of the banter in that, and that can drive people to the fights. And these are the sort of things that we need to start doing here to start building up the crowds at a lot of these shows.
Actually, we can actually bring that up now. We've just actually got an announcement last week that Blake Caparello will be fighting Lance Bryant, who's one of the best, who's actually one of our best boxers in New Zealand. It's actually quite a massive announcement here in New Zealand for us.
Yeah, Blake's a great fighter. He's been in there with some top opposition, and look, he's always handled himself very well. He's an absolute battler, and you have to be. You have to be on top of your game to come up with anything against him, because he'll just keep coming. And I think, look, if anyone that can beat him will be well on their way to, you know, challenging for a world title or getting to that level. I think Blake's his only losses have really come against top opposition. So I think he'll be viewed by people on the rise as someone that, if you can get a win over him, then you'll be viewed as someone to watch out for. So yeah, it should be a top fight.
So
yeah,
Blake Caparello has lost to Sergey Kovalev by TKO, Andre Didaro by unanimous decision, and Isaac Chilemba. But he's also have a knockout victory over Jordan Tszyu, Benji. Did you know that?
Yeah, I did know that. He's actually defeated 4 Kiwis so far, Jordan Tszyu, knockout, which Jordan Tszyu actually took that fight in the last notice. Daniel McKinnon, who's awesome fighter. He actually ended up he fought Robert Berridge himself as well, but he had to stop fighting because he got a brain bleed from Robert Berridge's fight. And like Josh Tai, who's the Jordan Tszyu's brother, yeah, from like his second fight. So he's quite known to defeating Kiwis. And again, Robert Berridge actually took the fight against Blake on late notice as well. So this is actually quite a big fight. And in my opinion, Lance has a strong chance to actually win, because I've seen some people, especially in Australia, might find this controversial me saying this, but he's actually a very tough boxer. But is he going to fight at light heavy, or is he going to fight at cruiserweight?
No idea. Anyone know? Is it announced on BoxRec?
Well,
regional title.
No, is this an 8-round fight? I believe on BoxRec it's marked as light heavy, but you just never know, because they might have put down as light heavy just because they know Blake is light heavy. But you just never know.
Have you done interviews with Blake Caparello?
I actually haven't. Yeah, I've been at a couple of his shows, but not been working on them. So I've actually never bumped into Blake. Weirdly.
Well, with Lance Bryant, he's actually had 2 New Zealand titles, 2 IBO titles, and like IBF title. He's reached 60th in the world. He just need that one big break to get him to that world title contention.
Well, fingers crossed. I think New Zealand fighters, and I think it'd be good for them commercially to start bringing their brand further. Because I think there's a good, obviously, domestic following, which is why it's easy for fighters to make their way in New Zealand. Certainly, also it seems to with these guys and even Berridge before. And I think I think, like I was saying before, I think if we can start sharing these fighters, so they're Aussie fighters are known more in New Zealand, Kiwi fighters are known more in Australia, and that's the starting base for them, taking that brand globally afterwards. So yeah, look, I think it'd be good to see some mixing of the waters.
Well, yeah, especially like I would like to see more fights where it's actually not just like New Zealanders coming over expecting to lose, as we see quite often, but more of a challenging fight from a
Yeah.
top-ranked Australia versus a top-ranked New Zealander.
Yeah, well, I've seen one of your boys, Nort Beauchamp, comes out here a fair bit, and he's often upset the apple cart whenever he's come out. So I think, yeah, when he comes out, he's always been great value. So I think, like I say, when they come to win, they put on a good show.
Actually, that's actually on our list of topics to talk about. Joel Brunker versus Nort Beauchamp. How did you feel about that fight?
I think it'd be a great fight.
It just happened recently.
Oh, I haven't. Oh, sorry, I didn't even see it then. What was? Yeah, what did happen?
So Nort Beauchamp won the fight by split decision, and it was actually quite a decent fight. What do you think, Gladrap?
Yeah, so it was an interesting win. I think it was one of the biggest Trans-Tasman upsets that I've seen. Because Joel Bronke came in with 32 wins, and Nort Beauchamp had around 16. So I thought Nort did well to sort of to outpoint Joel. Like he landed this Manny Pacquiao, the straight left. Like anytime he wanted, he was very good in the clinches. I thought he deserved the win.
And I think it's like it was good judging as well, because if you had like very amateur judges, they wouldn't see it properly. How this happened was Nort was on the back foot and Joel was coming on the front foot. But every time Joel was in his range, Nort would actually land much more cleaner punches than Joel was throwing.
Well, Nort's like I say, I think he's a great fighter, and I saw him, not too long ago. He was brought over here to fight Jerry Clancy in Sydney, and put on a great performance. It was a war between the two, and he looked like he'd been in a war by the end of the fight. But he was always stuck to his boxing and was clean throughout, and I was always impressed whenever I saw Nort over here. So I'm surprised that he's beaten Joel. I'd be honest about that, but I'm not massively surprised because I know the sort of attitude that he trains and fights with.
Yeah, and like Joel was actually ranked WBA 12th, and because of that loss, he lost that ranking. Unfortunately, Nort didn't actually achieve the WBA top 15 rankings, but it's still quite a big achievement for Nort, and I'm expecting more fights to happen in Australia for Nort, because he actually called out what's his name? Sorry, man, I forgot his name already.
Billy Dib.
Yeah, Billy Dib.
Oh, okay. Look, I think what he might find is that he might struggle to get fights over in Australia now, unfortunately, because he has shown that he's dangerous and he will come and upset the apple cart. And unfortunately, we don't see enough people taking those risks. Like I say, Nort's not really ever involved in boring fights, so he should get fights easily. He should be able to be an easy sell, but he's not going to be he's not an easy night for anyone. So no one's going to jump at the chance to fight him unless they're forced to. So he's probably going to be one of those guys that's going to have to force his way into these fights and get in some mandatory positions to get those fights.
Yeah, and he's being managed by Steve Scott. Oh, okay, we'll bring this up right now. Jeff Horn versus Anthony Mundine. Has this fight been confirmed?
As far as I'm aware, it's been confirmed. I've seen. I know that the teams met up in Brisbane, I think yesterday, to discuss. I think the venue's the biggest sticking point at the moment, from what I've seen. I understand they've agreed on a 50-50 split, which is impressive that the teams have agreed to that. And I think the only real sticking point at the moment is the venue, and apparently there's a little niggling around the weight. But my understanding of that is that the Horn camp are sticking at the 70 kilogram agreed limit, which is obviously 3.5 or 4 more above the usual welterweight limit. But apparently, I think Mundine's team are trying to get an extra kilo or two out of the deal, which is obviously going to help their man. So I think those are the two sticking points. But as far as I'm aware, it looks confirmed, and it looks like it's going to be Suncorp or somewhere here in Sydney.
What's your prediction, Tommy?
I age is the factor in this fight. Look, I've got a lot of time for Anthony. I think he's fantastic. He's been a fantastic ambassador for Australian boxing. So a lot of people don't agree, but I think he's not going to be easy work for anyone. Never has been, and he never gives up. We saw that we've seen that in a few of his fights. The Clotty fight, for example, where he was, just kept getting knocked down, but just kept coming back. There's no way he was going to win that fight, but he just kept getting back up from those knockdowns. So I think, as long as he brings that spirit in for a cracking fight, but I think Jeff's strength, Jeff's youth pull him through. I think over Chok's experience.
So if you look at the poll over here, so 76% of people on Fight Call Out believe that Jeff Horn is going to win, and 24% think Anthony Mundine is going to win. You think that's about right?
Yeah, look, I think that's about right. I wouldn't, I think Mundine will use that to motivate himself. But yeah, look, I think it'd be a massive upset if Chok was to beat him.
50-50, that's pretty interesting though, right? I would have thought maybe Jeff Horn was the A side. I mean, on what he's accomplished,
Yeah, but Mundine brings the money. And he always has done in Australia. He's until the Tommy Browne fight, he was the only person in the world that had every single one of his fights on pay-per-view. So it's, they see he's not short of a few pennies, and he knows how to sell pay-per-views, and that's by usually pissing people off. So I think he'll do that in this fight. He'll piss everyone in Australia off. He'll talk about Jeff being too nice. He'll get under everyone's skin, and you'll see plenty of headlines across all the news channels about something controversial that he said about why the Australian flag should be changed or something else. But all that does is drive people to buy it because they want to see Jeff knock him out. So at the end of the day, everyone wins from that scenario.
Would you say that Mundine's name is just as big as the David Tua name in New Zealand?
Oh, I'd say probably bigger. Mundine's been the best at two different sports in his career, and I don't know too much about rugby league, but from what people have told me, he was legitimately one of the best in the league when he was there, and then he switched over and became multiple weight world champion. So I think he's as well known. He's maybe not as well liked, but he's I'd say certainly as well known.
Do you think Jeff Horn should stay? Well, since he's lost his world title, should he move up to super welter, or should he, after this Anthony Mundine fight, stay in the welterweight division?
It all depends on how his body takes to the extra few kilos, I guess. If he bulks up for this fight and struggles to lose it, then he leaves himself with no choice. If he stays small, then he loses a bit of an advantage in this fight. So we'll see. He's getting to the age now where his body is going to start wanting to be heavier, and he'll struggle to lose weight more and more. So probably about the right time. He does really, really struggle to make welterweight, and I think that's part of that showed in his performance against Crawford. So yeah, who knows? Who knows? I think he'll probably see the welterweight division as one that's probably easier to get a fight in because of his rankings and his previous in the division. And the super welterweight's not quite as much money in there, and there's some pretty strong champions that he probably wouldn't fancy himself as a favourite.
What's happening with Willie Meehan?
Oh, Willis Meehan. Well, he just came back into he just had a fight either like a couple of weeks ago or last month. It was a great return against another Fijian. As we know, Willis Meehan is born in New Zealand, but he's got Fijian heritage, so it's great for him to fight someone against someone that's actually from his heritage. It's great to see Willis Meehan back because he's like one of my favorite fighters.
Look, Willis, I've said this for a long, long time. Willis Meehan's one of the most naturally gifted fighters I've ever seen in any gym. I think I saw him 5 years ago, 5 or 6 years ago, sparring with Alex Leopai and his old man, and a few other boys, and we were just like, who is this kid over there? And we were chatting to Carly and said, introduced us to Willis, and I've just never seen someone so fast at that size, and his hands and his body. He moves very quickly. His upper body movement's incredible. His hand speed's incredible. And obviously I see him sparring with Lucas Browne in some fairly well circulated footage. And then there's but I think in general, let's say when I saw him sparring Alex at that point had just come off a world title fight. I think it wasn't long off a world title fight, and was wrecking the heavy bay. You could see how hard he was hitting, and Willis was putting his head forward, walking in with his hands down, and it's good to watch. And so I've seen him live a few times, and he's just as exciting. And he's one of those guys that if he commits to the sport, he can. There is no limit to where he can go. His natural athletic ability is second to none.
Yeah, and he can go so far, and I am looking forward to seeing him in the ring again. And I think his next fight should be like something that should be more testing him. And the only thing is that people don't want to fight him as well.
Well, yeah, that's the other thing. I remember that at that point he'd only had 1 or 2 fights, and they didn't want us to do any filming with him sparring or any filming of him doing too much training. Because they're already struggling to get in fights, and I don't blame him. I wouldn't want to fight Willis if I was a heavyweight. If I was a name, he's dangerous, and if you're not a name, then you're fodder. So yeah, he's going to struggle to get fights, and they might have to pay to get some opponents in. They might have to travel to get fights, but look, I think he could probably step up as quickly as he wants. Like I say, when he puts the time in, he'll the sky's the limit.
Oh, he certainly could go for the Australian title. That shouldn't be some sort of way to actually get him a couple of fights.
Yeah, he could easily. I'd say he could easily challenge for the Australian title this year without a doubt. In fact, him and Dempsey McKean would be a cracking fight.
Oh yes, I liked Dempsey. He's a nice guy. I actually made his Wikipedia page. But yeah, that would be a cracking fight. Maybe even like a warm-up fight against his last opponent, Willie.
Yeah, Will and Azzy would be good as well. They'd probably get some good banter going if that fight was to happen. I think either of those fights, I'd be happy to see Willis back in the ring. I'd like to see him in against someone that could last a few rounds, just so we can really start to see. Also, other people can start to see what Willis is about. But yeah, I think he's just got to get momentum. Like I say, I think before that fight, it'd been 2 years. Since he'd been in the ring, so he's got to get his foot on the gas. He's got to get a few fights under his belt, and he's got to do it quickly because there's a few more Meehans on that production line coming through. And if he's not careful, he's going to get overtaken by some of his younger siblings.
Oh, really? I didn't even know that he had a younger sibling. So he better be careful then.
Yeah, well, there's I think the youngest one has been doing a fair bit of amateur fights, and I've seen Carly was showing me some videos recently, and chip off the old block as you'd expect. They're all the size of fridges, so they're all going to be heavyweights, and I think they've all got that Carly's natural talent and size. So who knows? We'll maybe see a few more Meehans gracing the ring.
Just dominating the whole entire division.
Well, let's hope so.
It becomes like the Klitschko brothers.
Did you see the Pratap Singh fight with Sam Soliman?
I did, but I did watch it, and look, I think everything that could be said about the refereeing and the decision in that fight has been said. Look, I think we'll probably see that. That'll probably be one decision we will see overturned after saying that we don't see it much earlier on in the show. Yeah. I think that's probably one we will see because there's been so much and it's really unquestionable. Look, I don't know whether, I don't want to say there was anything intentional there. I think a lot of these things can be, I don't want to get myself in too much trouble, but you go to a lot of these shows and some of these referees and judges are, older than God, and they've been around the block a few times, and obviously they know the sport, but they're in a position where they need to be watching something carefully. They need to have sharp eyes, and it's just a fact that you're just not at that point. So I think there needs to be a real push, particularly in Australia, to bring in younger people into officiating, into the judging, and to do more training around it. And that probably won't happen until there's more funding for the sport, and there won't be more funding to the sport until the government really changes its mind on boxing, because we see it's just an uphill battle to keep boxing going in Australia. The amount of paperwork that's put in place by the government, particularly in New South Wales, to stop a lot of fighters, to stop a lot of promoters, it doesn't help the situation. And it's like we saw, we didn't have the UFC in Melbourne for however long because they wouldn't allow it there. So I think there needs to be wholesale changes before we see too much change at the grassroots.
Yeah, it just looked like Sam Soliman's a veteran, and I think the referee was sort of tended to believe him over Tszyu, who's sort of the new kid on the block. So I think whatever Sam was telling him, he was like, yeah, that's totally right. Where he was sort of ignoring what Tszyu was sort of protesting about.
Yeah, and look, boxing's small circles, especially in Melbourne, especially in Sydney. So there's 4 or 5 referees really that you're seeing at Sydney fights. So if you've been fighting in Australia for 20 years, then they probably bumped into each other a few times. They probably know each other. And I'm not saying that's an intentional bias, but if someone you know is telling you something, someone you know is on the other side, and you don't know them, and whether it's intentional or not, these sort of biases come in. And once you start down that path, you could tell. I think on the second sort of knockdown that he didn't call, I think he was in too deep at that point. He just, he was like, "Oh, that was the same as the one I didn't call. I better not call that one either." So I think that was really what it was. I don't think there's any question they were both knockdowns. Sam was really in trouble at that point, in trouble for large parts of the fight. So yeah, I'd like to see. I don't know if anyone wants a rematch, but I'd certainly like to see the decision overturned at least, or Tszyu given a chance to fight for the title again.
I like the way the commentators didn't hold back at all. You could see them getting quite passionate at the end. There was this one commentator saying, "I don't care, that was wrong." It was good to see some honesty,
Yeah, and we need to see more of that. You see it more on these streams than you do. I think when you're looking, and it's the same as any major sport. When you're if you're on a major broadcasting network or something like that, then you obviously need to be a bit more careful, because there's contracts in place and there's people that are all intertwined in this that you can't upset, and you want to get invited back. So
bureaucracy.
So I think, but when you see a lot of these online shows, they bring in fighters, or they bring in people that know the sport a lot more, and they're more excited by the sport, and then that's when you get a bit more passion. Maybe it's a bit less restrained in the commentary. Although, to be fair, I think the way that fight was going, anyone would have called what was happening. It was, I think the referee was the only one that wasn't aware of how terrible it looked.
Do you think the referee will get reprimanded for the actions that happened in that fight?
It's I don't like to single people out, but at the end of the day, if I do shit in my job, I'll get reprimanded for it. And that's the same in any job. So I don't think refereeing should be any different. If you do a bad job, you need to be told, and you need to understand why, and you need to fix that so it doesn't happen again. So I think it can't be brushed under the rug. Look, I'm not saying let's go out and say you can never referee again or anything else, or people make mistakes, and you say a lot of this is down to education, and the sport's changed a lot in probably in the time that he's been refereeing and watching it. So and there is little to no education for referees in terms of what changes in the sport, what rules are ever changing. So I think there needs to be more of a support network for these guys, and then, like I say, proper training will see the officiating getting better. I say I don't like to bash anyone, but he did a bad job. Let's be honest.
Yeah, I don't want to say anything nefarious or anything, but I just felt like, even when they announced it, they said, it's Sam Soliman's last fight and he's about to retire. So, maybe the referee just felt compassionate for him, as opposed to Tszyu. It could be a variety of things.
That definitely plays into it, and you see fighters get worried about away and home advantages all the time, and something nostalgic like a last fight can sometimes play a factor.
Yeah, but I do feel bad for Tszyu, because he had that title, and then to lose it in a fight like that, it just you feel bad.
Like, so I think he'll probably get the title back, or he'll be given a chance to fight. Yeah, I'll be shocked if he isn't.
It'll be at least like changed to a no contest or something like that. And,
yeah, and it'll be instated as the mandatory challenger or #1 contender and fight for a vacant title. But yeah, so there's too much on social media. There's too many people making noise about it for something not to happen, really.
Did you want to talk about Tommy Browne, Benji?
Yeah. So Tommy Browne, he's coming close to near retiring soon. He's actually fighting for 3 what would you call minor world titles. He's fighting for the UBF, the UBO, and the WBF world titles in Sydney in just a couple of weeks.
Yeah. Look, I think like I say, he's coming near to retirement. It'd be good for him to get to go out on a winning streak. He obviously fought really hard to get into a place to challenge Mundine and had that huge fight in January. Like I said, I don't know how much further than these titles that he can go. Like I say, I think Mundine's maybe, like we're saying, a bit past his peak in comparison to Horn, and Horn is at that sort of world title challenging level. And I think, you know, Tommy's probably a way off of that. So yeah, it'd be good to see him go out with a couple of wins, but I think he's, after seeing, you know, the loss earlier in the year, he's probably not got too much left in the tank. But
he's actually starting to get quite a good support network in America.
Yeah, I did see
well.
that. And I see he's obviously had a few fights in America. So maybe, you know, changing camp and a changing environment, maybe there's a new lease of life there. We often see that in fighters. So maybe he does have a few fights in him. It could be good if he can build a swell of support. So he's obviously got, you know, he's well known. He's had obviously a big fight in January in Australia. And so he's got a few wins on his record since then. So yeah, I think why not, you know, push into some big domestic fights and see where that takes him.
Yeah, and it'll be also good to see. Well, hopefully he might do like one more Kiwi fight. Actually, I don't even know if he's fought Kiwi yet, has he?
Not that I'm aware of. Although it's not something I look for on people's records, I'll be honest.
Oh, firstly for me, since Kiwi. But yeah, it's good that he's got a good support system in America. I wonder if he's going to go down like that pathway of trying to get one more shot going down the pathway of either world rankings or a major world title.
Look, I think it's dangerous when fighters get to the end of their career and there is always that one more. But only he and his team know if he does have it in him. So it's, you know, it's not for anyone to judge. You know, people who won world titles much older than him. So yeah, who knows? But yeah, we'll see.
Okay, let's go on to I think it's one of our last few, or maybe our last topic for today is Jai Opetaia. Opetaia. Yeah, he's really like inches away from getting that world title shot.
Yeah, definitely, and another young talent that we're seeing coming out in the Southern Hemisphere. Look at that smile. I think he's, you know, Jai's a real nice guy, real level-headed. He's not someone that gets carried away with himself or, you know, thinks he's anything that he's not. He's very level-headed, very down to earth. He's got a very strong support network around him. Sometimes I've seen them get very emotional around fight nights, but yeah, I think Jai is one of those people who's got all the natural athletic ability in the world, and I think everyone can see that. He's obviously a cruiserweight, but he's had a load of fights at heavyweight here because he just can't find fights. I've seen him fight a few heavyweights in Sydney, and yeah, look, he's just he's a natural athlete. He probably could have turned to 4 or 5 sports, but luckily for us, he's turned to boxing, and you know, there's no rush for him. So he's still very young, and plenty of time to build him and to build his name before he needs to push into big fights. The cruiserweight division's very tough at the top, so yeah, so they will take their time with him, I think, but he's yeah, definitely one to keep an eye on.
Yeah, and I feel like he's probably going to be he's going to get quite huge, I think, in Australia. I think he's going to go beyond, even maybe beyond Jeff Horn, because he's definitely got the ability to do that. He's got the support network to do that, and I think he can. And You know, there's actually a couple of fights that I would love to see him, like maybe him versus David Light, who's goes between heavyweight and cruiserweight. Him versus Hemia, who wants to go down to cruiserweight. It's all New Zealanders here. Him versus even Lance Bryant. In fact, this is like the fight I wanted to see is Jai versus Lance Bryant originally.
Yeah, I think that'd be a good fight. I think Jai looks better against better opposition. So as he steps up, we'll see more and more. I think he will learn from every fight. I've seen him in the gym, and I've seen him. He takes instruction very well, and you can tell he's someone that takes these sort of things on board. I've also seen him at his open sparring days up on the Central Coast, where he's just there giving advice to young kids who just starting around in the sport. So I think he's got the right mindset to go very far. And I think, I don't want them to rush him. And I think like I said, I don't think they will. And I think, some big domestic fights. They build his name up here in Australia, New Zealand. And then that's the base camp for moving on past that.
Yeah, and like, I guess another name I just remembered, Panuve Hilo. What do you think about that, Gladrap?
Panuve against who?
Jai.
Panuve is like, he's see, listen, he was a top cruiserweight in New Zealand, Tommy.
Yeah.
But the other day he came in at his weigh-in and he fought at heavyweight, man. Like, the guy just put on a lot of weight.
It happens, man. It happens to the best of us.
Yeah.
There was a lot of things around that though, because like there was like 4 pull-outs for that fight alone. And then when the fight nights, they actually found someone very, very last minute, and it was the only fighter they could find is heavyweight, so he just didn't bother shedding off those 5 kgs, so he just kept it relaxed. But like,
why not?
Do you know who Panuve is, Tommy?
Again, my knowledge of
wait, I'll share this video with you. So check this out. So this is Panuve, right? This was the top heavy cruiserweight in the country, and then here we go. And he came up on the weigh-in, and he looked like a heavyweight. So,
you show his video of his debut. He won the fight by knockout.
He's really, really good. This guy's a really good fighter. But he's just had a kid now, so he's you know what I mean? He's in family mode now, But he's a top cruiserweight, so that would be a great fight though to see him against Jay. I think he has a good chance.
I think if he's as good as you say, it'd be great to see them testing themselves.
Really good.
I think it's good to see these guys testing themselves against tough opposition on the way up, rather than getting to 20-0 without ever really testing themselves, because that's when we see people get nasty shocks, especially at the heavier weights. When your first tough opposition is world level, that's a big learning curve.
Yeah, and like Jai, I keep on getting told that Jai and Willis Meehan, they spar and train together, don't they?
That is, I haven't seen it, but that is definitely some sparring that I'd like to be a fly on the wall for. You just think the speed and the size in that ring is there's a lot going around, and that I imagine that would be very enjoyable to watch.
So, what's the chances for like a Australian mega fight against Jai versus either Denny Green or Mark Flanagan?
Oh, okay. Look, I think the Flanagan fight has been spoken about a fair bit. I've certainly heard that been mentioned, and I'd love that fight. I think it's a great fight. Mark is very, very tough, very strong, and I think that'd be great. I think him and Flanagan would be great. And who was the other one?
Danny Green.
Danny Green.
Well, I mean, yes, Danny's a bit old, but a bit much older now. But he's still quite tough within him. So
yeah, I wouldn't want to go through the rigmarole of seeing them trying to drag another pay-per-view out of that stone. So I think, I think it's probably best that he sticks to the commentary for now. I like Danny, but I think his last few fights haven't really been at that level, and I think it'd be a shame to see someone like that go down against an up and comer. So it's maybe just best to leave that alone.
I just want to talk about one more fighter, Have you seen this fighter, Tommy?
Yeah, I've seen him before.
Man, this is the first time I'm seeing you fight, man.
I don't think we need to put that on. But on the subject of other fighters,
yeah, but are you fighting soon, Tommy?
I haven't for a while. There's obviously been calls to get me back in there. I'm a bit overweight at the moment though, so it's not on the horizon anytime soon.
Because right now it's like a celebrity fight, right? I mean, you're quite welcome to Australia.
Well, you're gonna come over here and fight me?
That would be pretty intense, right? Gladra versus T2T.
Yeah, we'll do it. We'll do it. The fight of the sort of Z-list YouTube channels.
We should fight on the undercard of Jeff Horn and.
Yeah, I'm sure they'll be down for that. But before we go, though, we got a couple of fighters from Australia that are travelling overseas in the next few weeks. So I just want to give them a bit of a shout out. Obviously, Luke Jackson's getting all the media coverage. He's got a massive fight against Carl Frampton over in Windsor Park, big stadium fight in the UK, which is going to be awesome. Really looking forward to that, and really hope that he can bring everything to that fight. I know how hard he's been training, and I know how hard he wants it. So I'd love him to come away with a victory in that fight, despite obviously growing up supporting Frampton. And I think obviously going over to Glasgow to fight on an MTK show. Good friends with Dara, so obviously hoping that he can pick up a victory in my hometown. And just want to wish both of them all the best, and I think everyone should get behind them. Super Foley on Twitter and Instagram for Dara, and Luke Jackson on Twitter and Instagram for him. Keep an eye out for both those boys and give them all your support.
And before we head off, what's next for you?
For me, I just think I'm just going to pick up a regular spot on here. No, I think look, I got some stuff coming up. I'll be meeting with some people over the next few weeks, so keep an eye out on the channel. Going to be catching up with Kerry Foley, who's got a fight with Jade Mitchell coming up in September in Melbourne. You obviously will know him from his Robert Berridge days.
Yes, of course.
And Kerry just lives around the corner, actually. I'll be seeing Kerry in the next few days. Also, I've got an interview with George Cambosis coming up, so keep an eye out on that. We'll be announcing hopefully his next fight very soon. So that'll be over the weekend, and I'll try and catch up with Dara before he heads off to the UK as well. And then I'll be hopefully be up in Brisbane for Ryan Murdoch's fight in 6 weeks' time, and say Melbourne for Kerry's the week before, and I think maybe Brisbane a few weeks after that again, potentially if Lucas is fighting on the Goldie. So if you're anywhere near those shows, get out there, come say hello. And I say for everyone, it's just important to get out to these shows and start supporting them, buy the pay-per-views and watch the streams, and just get involved, because the more companies see the views and the more they see people buying tickets, the more they'll invest, then the more the fighters will get, and the better the sport will become for everyone. So just make sure you support the show. If you can pay for it, please do. And that's when we just start to see the sport snowball. And we're seeing such a great crop of fighters like the ones we've mentioned. There's loads more on the way through in Australia. And, just in Sydney, there's boys like Danny Keating coming through, who I think's got a great future ahead of him. And, there's loads of people that I think in a few years' time will be challenging for world titles. There's guys that are nearly doing it, the Maloney brothers. See massive news that they're in the World Boxing Super Series. Try to get out to that if I can. If you want to support me, at T2T Boxing on Instagram and Twitter. And if you've got any suggestions for what to do next, let me know. Open to all suggestions. If there's anyone you want me to speak to, let me know.
Are you doing any commentating as well? Any commentating soon?
I haven't been getting the call recently, so I don't know. We'll have to wait and see.
Well, let's hope if we get a New Zealand versus Australian fight happen anytime soon, we'd love to have you back on the show as well.
Oh, for sure. Anytime. I'll just give me a shout, and I'll if I'm free. I'm always happy to jump on and have a chat with yourself and GladraP.
Yeah, it was an absolute delight to have you on, man. Thank you very much.
I appreciate that, boys. Look,
it's good to have both the Watts.
Your hospitality.
I'll see you at the next family reunion,
keep it real. Our accents are slightly different, but different sides of the house, obviously.
Hey, but that's a good matchup, man. T2T versus Gladrap. That could sell maybe 5 tickets or so.
Yeah. What you weighing these days?
65.
Yeah. See, you've either got to put on some weight or I've got to come down. It's just, we're about 10 kilos, well, about 12 kilos different at the moment.
What is 65? What weight class is that?
65 is just under welter. Oh yeah, it is welterweight. Yeah.
Yeah, you'd be in the welterweight, within the welterweight limit. You could have dinner and still fight.
Are you super welter?
I'm more like a light heavy right now.
Nice.
I'm more of a heavyweight right now.
Anyway, man, that was awesome, man. Thank you so much for your time.
Get the sponsorships up, mate. Sell some tickets, and I'll be there.
Boom. Thank you so much, Tommy. Appreciate it. Thank you, Benji.
No problem.
Next time I see Ongen, I'll see if he wants to put it on the show.
Great.
Let's get it done, man. All right. See you guys. Thank you very much.
Cheers, guys.
See ya.